This is First Encounter, a podcast exploring both the foundations and the future of historical romance. Hello and welcome to First Encounter. I am Andy James, a historical romance enthusiast and author, and I'm very excited to be joined by Nichole Van. She's one of my favorite historical romance authors, but we're actually today, I am talking to Nichole about her books and everything wonderful in historical romance and everything we love. But we are doing kind of two episodes together, and this is our bonus episode that we're doing. And we're actually going to be discussing the use of AI, and more specifically, I guess, generative AI, and we'll go into terms in a minute, in publishing and in historical romance. So, Nichole, thank you for joining me for multiple things.
Awesome. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So this came about, little background here. I have always been very anti-generative AI. And I have been pretty public about my stance on that in terms of the fact that I personally will not use it for a variety of reasons we'll get into in a minute. And it's getting harder and harder to discern. But because my stance is out there, because I put it on social media on my website that just so people know I will not use this. And so a little over a month ago, I put out the schedule for the rest of the year, what I was planning to do for the podcast, who I was planning to interview, in terms of authors, books I was planning to read, all of that. And I had a reader who I know reach out to me and just say, hey, I know you're kind of against AI, and I think Nichole's used it in the past. So just FYI, I don't know if I should even tell you that. And I was like, okay. So I reached out to Nichole. I basically was like, Here's the deal. Generally, I try not to uplift this, but I asked you to be here. I'm not going to revert that, but just be aware that people know my stance. And it's kind of up to you if you want to continue to discuss or not, but just be aware that there might be comments, questions, discussion around the AI factor, because I've been public about this. And Nichole was so lovely, just was like, well, why don't we chat about it? I was like, yes, please. I would love to. And as we, emailed and talked about our thoughts and things, we realized there's a lot to talk about. And so instead of taking away from her actual episode, because I want to actually talk about her books, we decided to make this into a bonus episode. So Nichole, not to put you on the spot, but why don't we start with you and some of your background kind of as a creative in general, as an author, your thoughts about AI and why you did use it, and your thoughts are changing and you're kind of not anymore. So there was a summary for you, but I'll let you explain it. So again, thank you so much for being here with me today and being willing to talk about this.
Awesome. I'm so happy to be here. I love talking about AI, actually. Mm-hmm. And it is true. I have used it in the past. I have been revising my opinion about AI. And let me give you my history.
Yes.
And that might help you understand why I feel the way I do about AI. So I was thinking about it this morning. I've spent literally the last 20 years of my life working as a creative. That has been my primary source of income. That has been my primary, everything I've done full time has been working as a creative. Now, 10 years of that was primarily as a photographer. It was not as a writer. My background is in writing. I have a grad degree in English, and I taught writing at the university level. My mom jokes that I'm on this 10-year plan with my career, because I taught for 10 years and then I did photography for 10 years. But I've been writing my photography and my writing overlapped a little bit. Yeah. And I do not see myself stopping to write anytime soon. And I still do photography. I do still do photography. I really pulled back on doing the weddings. I'm tired. I'd rather just do a family shoot or portraits, senior portraits or something. Yeah. Anyway, so with working as a creative, I've kind of seen it all. I mean, I started probably about 2004. And before I actually went full time in 2006, working as a photographer. And I've seen so many changes with technology throughout my life. I'm Gen X. I was graduated from college. I was in my late 20s when the internet hit. And so I've seen these iterative changes going on. I was right in the transition point where photography was moving from film to digital in the early aughts, in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. And I was right in the middle of all of that. And that was messy because there were a lot of people that were really upset that this new technology was disruptive. It was cheating. You don't understand the film. You're not working in the dark room. You're just cheating in Photoshop, blah, 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 all that stuff. And I was really team digital back then. I'm like, it's a different process, but it's still a process. There's no cheating involved. I mean, it's not like Photoshop is easy. It's just a different skill set. Come on. So I spent a lot of years working as a photographer. I won some really, really big awards. I was kind of it's hard because you don't want to like toot your own horn, but it's like trying to explain to people kind of like where
Yeah.
I was. Like
Right.
I was really kind of, I don't want to say at the top of of like the wedding and commercial portrait photography world,
Mhm.
but I was teaching at the really big conferences. I was in the really big magazines. In fact, I joke, I had an article in Professional Photographer magazine.
Ooh.
And I was not, this was in, I can't remember what year, 2010, 2011. And I didn't get the cover. And I was so mad because you want to know who was on the cover? Ivanka Trump, because she had gotten married
Uh,
that year. Yeah, to Jared
wow.
Kushner. I know,
Okay.
which at the time I was just like, oh, that's a random person I think I'd vaguely heard of. And now, anyway.
Mm,
So that was my world. That was my life.
mhm.
And then AI rolls around. And first of all, I have donated tens of thousands of images to AI, to its training over the years. I have donated all my books to AI training without wanting to.
Well, have
And
you
I am,
donated them
well,
or were
right.
they
No,
used?
they were stolen. No, my work was stolen. And
Yes.
I'm deep in the Anthropic copyright lawsuit. So when AI rolls around, my initial thought was, well, this is a helpful tool. And they stole it all from me in the first place. So how about I get a little bit of use out of what was already taken from me?
Hmm.
And that was kind of my thought, I think, initially, for probably about the first year and a half or so. But then at the time, I didn't really understand because here's my thing. I'm a designer. I'm never going to be hiring someone to do my own covers. I do all my
Yeah.
own covers. I do all
Yeah.
my own work. I'm never going to be hiring someone to do it for me because
Mhm.
why would I have to then explain my vision to another creative to then go, do you know what I mean? Like, why would I add another person into
Yeah, if
that
you've
creative
got
process?
those skills, I don't, so I hire a cover designer. But if you
Exactly,
have
right?
those skills, then use them.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I was never taking money. And that was my initial thought.
Hmm.
I'm like, I'm not taking money from anybody. Like, I was never going to hire someone anyway. And so I just was like, oh, this is a fun tool. But then I think as the years have gone by and as I realized I didn't understand the consumption of energy
Yeah.
that it's using our water, it's using our
Hmm.
electricity, it's using our infrastructure,
Hmm.
it's using our resources. And we feel that as people, our electrical bills are going up, our water bills are going up, everything, especially in the West here, it's like
Yeah.
catastrophe, all of this data usage and everything. And then also just the way that it's been viewed and like the extreme level of the piracy and all of these things I didn't really, I think, understand. And as I've come to
Yeah.
understand that, I just kind of made a commitment to myself, oh, probably about 6 months ago, that I'm done. I'm done. I'm
Hmm.
not going to do it anymore. And I just, the problem is, and we're probably going to get into discussing this, there is a very strong gray area in the realm of what's considered generative and what's considered functional AI. There's a very big gray area there. And
Hmm.
I don't know how to navigate that gray area. And I'll
Neither.
talk about some decisions I've made for myself. But
Mm.
anyway, that's where my stance is right now.
Yeah. So the thing that I love about your story is that you learned more and you changed your mind, right?
And
And
you can get that.
I think because I think right now for some people, this is a very black and white issue.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, you used it, you're done. I think because this is changing so rapidly, because there's so much that we're still learning about it, because like I'm no tech expert. I don't fully understand it all, right? I think we need to maybe allow for a little more grace. And so, I still personally plan not to use it, but like you said, how do we define what is and isn't? And so I think maybe we should talk about that right now because
Yeah.
there's AI tools and then there's generative AI. And the way that I personally kind of define the two, because I mean, I would say to an extent, we all use the tools, whether or not we know we are, right? Spell
Right.
check is technically an AI tool, right? I think it's also being built into so many of the programs we use daily now. And we may not realize necessarily that just by using this tool we used to use, like Google, Microsoft, all these things that it's kind of baked in. And I don't fully understand when I'm using these programs, like what is and isn't happening, right? So it's figuring that out and kind of just being aware of that. But I think the way I've defined it is for myself is generative AI to me is when you're using it to create something that didn't exist before versus the tools are helping you maybe edit or refine something that you've already created.
And see, and I just have to jump in and say really fast that
Mm-hmm.
I think that line gets really blurry, unfortunately,
Yeah.
depending on the tool you're using. So Photoshop, there. So my husband actually works in tech. So we have,
Mm-hmm.
he's a senior developer. We have conversations around AI all the time in our household. And especially knowing I was coming on this
Mm-hmm.
podcast, we had a lot of really, really
Yeah.
in-depth discussions of
Yeah.
AI. And there are different levels. So there is
Mm-hmm.
generative AI that works off what they call a local model, which is actually what a lot of developers are going to because they raised the credits to use, because you can use cloud computing or you can use your local computer when
Okay.
you're doing generating code, for example. And he's like, it's so expensive to use the cloud. So people are just going to local models that are just running on their computers and just using the resources of their computer to run the AI model. Take that for what you will. I don't know, good or bad, I don't know, but that's what they're doing. And Photoshop does something very similar, where some stuff is using cloud computing, some stuff is using local resources, some is absolutely functional, as you were talking about. So one of the best features that Photoshop added, which I know no one cares about Photoshop, but I'm illustrating the point here.
No, it's great.
It
It's
is
great.
so good. So one of the things that you always do that is so frustrating as a photographer when you're editing a photo, you have to select the subject out of the background. And that is
Yeah.
meticulous work. Like this photo behind me of my kids, pixel by pixel going around their bodies, hours of work. Now, functional AI does that for me. I click on them and it goes and it selects them. It's like
Mhm.
Christmas. I love that it does that for me.
Yeah.
But something else I also did, I thought, well, I have this photo here that I can refer to. Something else I did with this photo, I wanted to extend it over here when I shot it. I didn't shoot all that. So I meticulously had to go find another photo that I took out of this series, stitch it together, put it in there. It was an hours of work. So now in Photoshop, if I were to do this again, the photo ended right here. I can just select that and say, generate the background to match what's already there. And it goes, and it does it for me. It's generative, but it's also functional because the image is already there. It's
Right.
recreating what wasn't there, but it's using what's there to create that. Does that make sense? And
It
so,
does. It
and it
does.
does that, if
Yeah.
there was another person there and I said, remove the person, it would remove it. And it's generating what's behind, but it's also functional. So I feel like there's actually a lot of gray area
I
here
can
that
see that. I can
I don't
see
know how to
that.
navigate.
Yeah, I don't know that either. And I
Yeah.
think, you know, I record this podcast through a software platform called Riverside. And I use it because it makes editing easy for me because I'm not a video editor. I don't know how to do this stuff, right? And so it uses some of what I consider the AI tools, but maybe someone else would call it generative. I don't know. But it creates a transcript based on the conversation that we've had. And I use tools in my editing that take out pauses, that take out filler words because I say that all the time, things like that. So it just kind of can take these things out, but it's not like it's altering what we've already recorded. I'm not adding anything. I don't know. So in my brain, it's a tool. I don't know. It's a functionality. Other people might be like, no, you're using AI. I'm now going to cancel you. And hey, that's fine. Okay. But I think, so I think the other thing too that is kind of inherent in some of what we've talked about, I mean, technology is always going to advance and it's going to disrupt things. And at its core, I'm not against that because I think there's good that can come out of it. I think for me, my big issues and why I've been pretty anti-Gen AI, but again, how do you define a Gen AI? That's the question, right? But I think there's the two big ones for me are the things that you mentioned. So the environmental impact, I'm very concerned about that. Very concerned about that. And there's also the way that this was created. I think just taking people's copyrighted stuff without anyone's knowledge, consent, and certainly we weren't compensated for it, right? Right. And so the fact that this is just Like that really bothers me a lot. I'm like, if we can figure out a way to do this ethically where people are actually getting compensated for how their things, how that would work, I don't know. I don't know. But I mean, I think there's a way we could do this, but the way it's currently been created, I just feel like when we use it, we're kind of, like you said, stealing people's work. And the way that you explained where you're like, well, they've taken my work, so I might as well get some use out of this. That's a different mindset I've never thought of before, but I understand that.
Well, and it's hard because I hate even saying that because it feels like
Yeah.
I'm justifying it,
Well,
in a certain
no.
sense you
Yeah.
are. But like for me, I imagine the analogy of like
Mhm.
someone coming into my house and stealing something from me,
Yeah.
tying a bow on it, and then putting it out for sale.
Hmm.
And I just walk by and I'm like, this is mine. I'm taking it back. And they're like, oh no,
Hmm.
but that's stealing. You can't do that. You know what I mean? How dare you do that? And I'm like, okay, but it was stolen from me in the first place, and
Yeah.
it's
It's
circular. The
it's
logic is
very
hard. And
circular. Yeah, it's
for me,
crazy.
I just feel
Hmm.
like, and we can even talk about kind of at some point, because like, where do I go from here? That's been
Right. Right.
my big issue because I'm continuing to produce things that are then continuing to be
Right.
stolen.
Right.
And like, that
Exactly.
really makes me mad. And
It
what do I
makes
do
me
about
really
that?
mad too. Yeah. And I don't
Yeah,
know what to do about that. And I'm glad that the Anthropic lawsuit happened. It affects stuff that was before my books came out. So I'm not personally going to benefit from that because my books aren't included in what was part of that lawsuit. But do I know that my books are probably part of stuff? Yes, because they're on all the pirate sites, right?
exactly.
So it's
Exactly.
like,
Yeah.
uh, so it's very frustrating. And I think, but the other piece, and this is like not necessarily the creative piece, this is kind of a bigger overall, is the rate at which this is happening and the lack of regulation concerns me. Again, I'm not against advancing technology, but there isn't time right now, I think, there's always job loss and shift, I guess I should say economic shift anytime a big change like this happens, right? It's not great, but it happens. We
Yeah.
know that. But ideally, you have time to prepare for, to adjust to,
Yeah.
and that's not happening right now.
No, it's too fast. Like even
It's,
the internet took probably 6 or 7 years. This
yeah.
has been like two. And I think the other thing, and I don't think this is something that really hits book world very much, but because I live in
Mhm.
tech world with my husband, we talk about these things quite frequently. So the latest model of Claude, that's Anthropic's
Yes.
AI.
Hmm.
The latest model of Claude that they have not released yet can hack anything.
Oh,
And they freaked out when they realized it
well,
can
it's
hack
been on the
anything.
news about these. They've been testing and they've like
They keep
escaped.
escaping.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's actually completely separate. So Claude was but that's also terrifying that it keeps
it's
escaping its
terrifying. Yeah.
developmental environment and like goes rogue. No, Claude is so powerful that it can hack anything instantly. And so they were supposed to release it a few months ago and they didn't. And they actually went through and determined if the hack will affect more than
Yeah.
100 million people, then we will give the company this, our data set, so they can learn a way to defend against it before we release it. They're still in the process of that. How many companies affect 100 million people? Does your bank affect 100 million people? Probably
No.
not. Do you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
I'm like, I both, I just kind of feel like we're just watching this like
Yeah.
train come at us. And I asked my
Yeah.
husband, I was like, why are we still doing this then? If like,
Hmm.
if we literally are creating this resource that hackers can use to destroy everything,
Yeah.
why are we doing it?
Why are we
And he's
doing
like,
it?
well, the argument, of course, is that if we don't do it, China will. And I'm
Right.
like, he's like, but China's just scraping our models. So
Yeah. And
anyway,
there are
tangent. But the
like,
point is, this is why
yeah,
I've just been like, we're done with
this is
AI. I'm done
happening. This
using
is
it. Yeah,
happening.
this is
It is
happening.
happening and we can't ignore it. And
Yeah.
I think, again, I don't understand, like I live in the bookish world. Like I don't necessarily understand all of it, but from what I've heard is that some of the ways it's being developed can be super useful and helpful in terms of like medicine and different things in those areas. And I am all for that. And so I think it's just figuring out regulation around, because the thing that's so frustrating to me right now is they're like forcing companies to adopt this stuff.
Yes.
And so the platforms that we use every day, like I said, Google, Microsoft, these
Yes.
things, like they're just integrating it into everything and there isn't a choice for consumers. And so like even if it was just anytime there was an upgrade, it had to be like you had to get a notice and there was an opt-in versus us having to like figure out what even exists and searching through the settings to like have to opt out, like anyway, I could go on and I won't because I want
Well,
to talk more. Yeah.
It's true. Sorry. It's so
Sorry, no.
frustrating. Like one of the things
Hmm.
that makes me very angry is that you have to
Hmm.
opt in Word. You
Yeah.
have to opt into training. So if I put if I want to use Word most of Word's features, I have to opt in that whatever I open in Word, they
Hmm.
can use for training,
Yeah. Yeah. So
which is
some of the
just,
features that you relied on before
yeah.
are now
So
linked
either
to.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
Anyway, tangent.
But all this to say, it's a mess, and I don't think we can ignore it. Like, I don't necessarily know
Yeah.
if anyone is, but I think even just within the last year, 2 year, like I think it was late 2024 that I posted my own statement where I was like, "Oh, I feel like I need to say something about
Yeah.
this. Like, I am not using generative AI." And at that time, it was that statement was purely about images. So it was about my covers, promotional materials, those things, because I didn't think I'd need to justify that I, as a writer, am not going to use this.
Yeah.
Like I didn't think I needed to say that, you know, at the time. And now I feel like I need to update my statement, be like clear about the fact that the work you're reading was created entirely pulled
Yes.
from this brain. Like I don't know.
Exactly.
But so let's talk about it though. So this is bigger picture. Like I have
Yes.
big
Yeah.
issues with it, right? So
Yes.
environment, huge. They ripped us off, huge. Just the way that it's kind of spiraling out of control, huge. When it comes to the bookish world, right? So, or maybe we just creative spaces, I guess we should say, because the writing's one piece, but again, like we said, kind of the images are another. I think for me, I still don't see myself because of those concerns. I don't see myself using it. I'm not going to use it in my writing. There's conversation again around what is and what isn't, creating. So, I mean, Authors Guild, I think, has said that, if you're using it to idea generate, it's not writing for you. Basically, that is maybe acceptable. And so there's different things that I think the general publication sphere is going to have to figure out and agree on in terms of standards. And that's still a little murky right now. And then people are going to have to decide for themselves in terms of writers what they're okay with and readers what they're okay with. But I think, for me, I still think any project that I control, so my own books, people have been listening to this know, but I'm attempting to start a small publishing company focused on historical romance. We'll see if
I
that
love
works
it.
out. But anyways, if that does, then, I'm committed to the books produced there, like
Yeah.
they'll have human editors, they'll have human design covers, like I'm
Yeah.
committed to the products I can control will not use generative AI. Where it gets murky for me is the bigger picture of what's happening right now, even more granularly talking about specifically the historical romance space. I feel like AI has infiltrated historical romance more so than other genres at this point.
Really.
And I think, well, I don't know about writing. Again, I'm kind of basing this
Okay.
more on like image stuff.
Oh
And
yeah,
I
for sure.
think it's partially because there's just not as many good images you can use that are period appropriate, right?
Though that's it. There's nothing out there. Like there's
Yeah.
so little out there that
Yeah.
is period appropriate that gets it right. But even AI isn't great
Yeah.
at generating it either because there's just a complete dearth of imagery
Yeah.
for it to draw from, and so it doesn't really have a whole lot to train on.
So that's my theory. I don't know if this
Yeah.
is true, but my theory is because of the lack of images that's why it's being used. I see it being more
Yeah.
used more frequently in terms of promotion and covers in the historical space. And I think, when you look at, I mean, I don't live and die by Amazon charts. I'm a teeny tiny indie author. I'm not making the charts. But like when you look at them and all your categories, most that top 50 page is flooded with obvious AI covers, and half of them coming from kind of, these book mills that are just churning stuff out like Cobalt Fairy and these different things. It's really frustrating. And so I think I see, and this is my corner of the internet, and I fully understand that algorithms kind of create an echo chamber, right? So, but my corner of the echo chamber, I'm seeing readers more and more like, I don't want this. And they're starting to say, if you're using a generated image, how can I trust that you've written it as well? Is that fair? I don't know.
Well, I think that it's a hard one because, like,
Yeah.
for example, I can think of an author who will remain anonymous, an
Yes.
indie
I'm
author who
not
also
naming
writes in the
names,
historic.
but anyway,
No, we're not
yeah.
naming names. Who writes
Yeah.
in the historical space, and this was probably about 2 years ago when AI really kind of landed in.
Mhm.
And she had hired a designer to do her
Mhm.
cover, and it was darling, but she realized as it was getting closer to release date that the designer had used AI to create the cover.
Mhm.
And she's like, what do I do? I've already paid this person to create this cover. I'm pretty sure they used AI to do it. I'm worried. Like, I
Mhm.
don't want them to
Yeah.
be using AI. And I thought I was doing everything right.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you even
Yeah.
get away from it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I will say that when it comes to writing,
Mhm.
so I do say, yes, I have definitely used generative AI to create images. I have never once used generative AI to create my writing.
Yeah.
I've never used it for brainstorming. I've never used it for idea generation. I've never used it. I mean, I guess a little bit in the spell check, but even then, it's
Well,
just
yeah. I
finding
guess
my
to me,
errors.
spell
That's
check is
functional.
just we've been doing
Yeah.
that forever.
It's
Like,
not rewriting sentences for me. It's
yeah.
realizing
Right.
that you said
Right.
do here instead of so,
Right.
but which is so common.
Okay.
I will say as an author,
Uh-huh.
and this is, I think, what, because and I'm sure we'll probably get into discussing being accused of using AI.
Yes.
But for me, I basically, because I've had computer issues in the past and I'm terrified of losing anything, I saved my document every single day. So if you want to be like, did she use AI? I'm like, I got literally 100 versions of this document showing it from the beginning of the brainstorming every single day writing it. And you can clearly chart how I wrote this book. And I feel like as an author, if you're concerned about being
Mhm.
accused of using AI, that's the simplest, and you don't, like genuinely don't.
Yeah.
That's the simplest solution. Just the files are small, it's easy, just save a draft. Just
Yeah.
I just save the backup every single day so that way if I lose something, I'm not losing too much work.
Yeah. I know. I've had to start thinking about that. Like, there's all these things now that I'm like thinking about that I never did before. About like, if someone were to
Yeah.
accuse me, I don't know. Like, that's why I've tried to be upfront with statements saying, like,
Yeah.
hoping people would trust, you know, because I've been consistent with saying, but who knows? But I think a bigger conversation that I've been, not a conversation, thought, I guess, I've been having, right? So as I'm looking at trying to create this company, I think part of my frustration too is what's going on with historical romance writ large in publishing, right? So traditional publishing isn't doing much with historical romance right now at all, right? I don't need to go into that. I've gone into that, but it's frustrating. And I'm someone who I started out knowing I was going to self-publish, but for people who are hoping to go trad and now they're not, you know, maybe not even finding an agent because agents know publishing house don't want it, so it's not on their wish list and they're not picking it up. You know, it's just really hard. And so the best option for people right now wanting to write in our genre is either to self-publish or to find an indie publisher, right? And it's hard because there's not even, I mean, there are indie publishers who publish historicals. There's a couple that do quite prolifically. But if that's the route you're looking at, your options are limited. And so I've been really frustrated that I think kind of within the past year, I've noticed that two of the bigger houses, indie houses that are publishing historical romances in the indie space have embraced using AI covers.
That's
And
bad.
so it makes options for authors even more limited if that's something they want to avoid. And I think, and they can opt out, but they have to know to opt out. They have to. And some readers are now just saying they're not going to read anything from that house, even if that author, you know, has said, I don't want to be part of that. Right. And so it's hurting them as well. And so I'm just really frustrated, I guess, with the lack of options. And so I guess with this podcast, and then I recently just kind of, this was going to be an easy project, right? I was like, I want to start a list of people who are our creators who love historical romances and then pair them with historical romance authors looking for our creators.
Well, that's awesome.
I was like, this is going to be easy, low maintenance. It'll be fine. And quickly ran into issues with AI, had to pull it back, figure out a different way to do this. So now not quite as low maintenance. But, you know, and so I relaunched this about 2 weeks ago. And I feeling people think maybe I pulled a bait and switch and I didn't try to because I was like, we're not going to promote things with AI because readers have told us they don't want that. I don't support it. But then I was thinking about it. I was like, well, what about authors who maybe are part of these publishing houses and, you know, they signed these contracts like 2 years ago before they knew they had to
Yeah.
say, I don't want AI. Like for me, I have always the projects I've done, trying to start the publishing house, doing this list, which isn't even a big deal, doing this podcast, right? I've always had kind of the main goals of uplifting the genre, right? Because we're the wallflowers, we're the ugly stepsister right now. So uplifting the genre because I love it. And the second is really kind of supporting indie authors and also kind of my no gen AI. And I feel like because of the greater landscape right now within historical romance and the limited options, because not everyone can afford to self-publish.
Oh.
It is, it's a thing. So if you can't do that and you need to use these indie houses, like what are the options? And so I was like, my values and goals are coming into conflict here a little bit. And so thinking through that, I made the decision that I said, for like a year here, like not forever, but for a limited period of time, I'm going to give kind of a grace period because this is a newer shift for these companies. Authors may or may not have known things are changing quickly. So I'll go ahead and, share the stuff if an author's book. And I got some backlash and I expected it. And I basically was like, temporarily, because of the circumstances I explained of like contract lengths and all these things, I feel like now we're at a point where hopefully people know to advocate for that if that's something they don't want, or to make decisions on designers and publishing places. But it's hard when there's limited options. And so I still am fully committed to no AI, but where does it become that we're like harming the genre and harming authors if we're just kind of blanket saying no because there is so much gray area? And
Well,
I
I think
think,
that's, oh, sorry.
yeah. No, go
No,
ahead.
that's exactly the problem.
Yeah.
Like I look at my own covers, right? Which I
Mm-hmm.
still am creating my own covers. And it's like, when it comes to my writing, there's nothing I can do about the
Mm-hmm.
fact that it's going to be stolen. It's going to be used to train
Yeah.
AI. Like there's nothing, I have just had to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want my choices are, do you want to keep writing or do
Mm-hmm.
you not want to write? Like those are your choices. And I
Yeah.
choose to keep writing. When it comes to the covers, I feel like I have a little more leeway. So I can create a beautiful, pristine image that I hired the models and I rent the costumes and I do the shoot entirely myself. And that's presenting a pristine image. And I've decided I'm not going to do generative AI because I feel like that's feeding the machine, if nothing else. For everything we've said, I can't. So the solution I've struck upon, and fortunately, I deliberately, when I set my design scheme for my current, the Earls of Cairnfell series, I chose one where I could potentially use stock imagery and stuff that was easier to
Mhm.
use, that the background is very clean and simple. The characters
It
are very
is.
clean and simple.
It's beautiful.
And, but I still muddy it with a little generative AI. I'm going to tell you that right now because it makes it useless for training if there's a little bit of generative AI in there. And that's deliberate on my part.
Interesting.
And
I
it is
didn't
what it
know
is.
that.
Like you can
So,
cancel me for that or not, but that's my choice because I don't
yeah.
want to be giving them something that's useful. I want to
So by
give them something
using
that
the
is
AI, they can't
useless.
use it?
Well, it makes it useless because it's muddied because it has all the AI
Okay.
signals in it. Does that make sense? So it muddies
Kind
it. So
of.
it's
Again, I'm
useless.
not techie, but yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, basically, because as a photographer, I can
Mhm.
zoom in and tell you instantly whether something was used with AI or whether it wasn't. It's at a pixel level. It's really obvious. It's much more obvious in images than it is in writing. Writing is difficult
Yes.
to tell
Yeah.
if it's written by AI
Mhm.
because you can't zoom in on the pixels and tell. But with
Right.
the image, you can. Like you
Uh-huh.
can zoom in on this picture behind me and instantly tell this was not created with AI. Nothing about this was created with AI. But you can zoom in on images that were generated with AI, and it's usually immediately obvious with how uniform the pixels are. It lacks the sort of, oh, what's the word? I keep thinking disruption, but that's not the right word.
I don't know. The
The
human errors.
randomness, the randomness
Yeah. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
how what an actual camera looks like. But you're absolutely right. It's really hard. Like I have contracts
Yeah.
that are signed with publishing houses. I have no control if they use AI
Yeah.
in the editing process. I have no control if they use AI
Yeah.
to generate my cover. I can kick up a storm. I can tell them no. They know that I
Right.
don't want them to.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. And like going back to my friend who she
Hmm.
hired a designer, she did everything she
Right.
thought she did right, and they still
Hmm.
used AI. And the reality is, speaking as designers, it's kind of like the same thing with writers. Some people just want to use the easy way out,
Yeah.
and it's easier to use AI. It's easy to use AI to write. It's easy to use AI to generate images, especially if you need money, and that's a driving factor.
Well,
And
and that's,
so
yeah,
a
I was
lot of
going to
people don't
say,
have the luxury of moral high ground.
Yeah, I
It's hard.
don't
It's a really hard topic.
I still would hope people would choose not to use Gen AI, but
Yeah.
financially, like, I get it. Like, I don't support it, but I get it. Like, I can understand that, right? Because, you know, I produce my books relatively cheap compared to some people, way more expensive than others. But I mean, my books are usually $2,000 to $3,000 a book
Yeah.
between editing and
Hmm.
cover and basic marketing. I don't do a lot. I'm terrible at marketing, and it takes a long time, especially when you're starting out, to earn that money back. I have produced 5 books. I have yet to earn back what I've invested in
Yeah.
any of them. And so you have to have that money up front. And that is a privilege. That is
Yes.
something that is not an option or accessible to everyone. And so
Yeah.
you have to turn to these houses, and then you lose a lot of control. And like I said, I would hope we're reaching a point where people are learning how to even have to think about, what do I need to advocate for when I am entering into these things. But I just don't think there's a lot of good options right now, like I said, within our space, when some of the bigger houses are embracing this. And so this is why we need Besotted Bookstore. Help support us, people, when we run the new campaign. Because I want to create that space. I want to create
Yes.
that option. I think it's more important than ever, and so it's just hard, because as a person who wants to support authors and wants to help creatives, like, I can understand and empathize with why people would use this. I can. But morally, because of the detriments,
Yeah.
I've decided that that's not something I'm going to use. And so like I said, any product I can create, like, I can control the product, I won't do it. And then, but where it gets muddy for me, where it used to be black and white, and now I'd say it's like a deep, deep slate gray. Like, it's
Yeah.
very, it's still pretty black and white, but I feel like I've had to figure out, like I said, I don't want to publish authors when the industry is giving them really, really, pardon my language, shitty choices. And I hate the inevitable language, because I don't think it is inevitable. I just think we need to figure out how to regulate these things and harness them and bring them in. But in a sense, it is inevitable, in that this is gonna, like, they're gonna keep rolling out this tech, and these things are gonna keep happening. Like, we can't stop it in general. I guess just to say that there are no easy answers. I certainly do not possess the right answers. And so I think as it becomes more complex, what I would say is, I think authors need to, it's frustrating because it adds this whole extra level to everything we have to do amongst everything
Yeah.
else. But I think authors just need to sit down and really think through for themselves, like, where are my lines? And I think we are at a point where you have to kind of communicate that, because I think we've hit that point. I think before,
Yeah.
you could kind of float along and not really have a stance. And I don't know if we're there anymore.
No, I'm with you on that. Like, I think that you need to make it very clear. Like, I don't use it in my writing.
Mm-hmm.
You drag me into a court of law, I can prove to you I haven't used it in my writing, because I'm keeping versioning, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. I would also like to say, I think it's very easy to, because we've touched a little bit on this. It's very
Mm-hmm.
easy to run on a witch hunt, and
Yes. And
to be
this is a
like,
good segue to talk about that, because I do want to
yeah,
talk about that.
because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, first of all, like, someone who doesn't know my history, who doesn't know my background, who doesn't know my experience in photography and all of
Yeah.
these different things, and how much of my work was stolen in order to create these
Yeah.
models that they're using. Like, if you were to go on to any image generating whatever and say, create an image, create a photograph in the style of Nicole Van, it can do that for you. It has enough information to do that for you. And so it feels very like that very much has informed how I
Mm-hmm.
interact with AI.
Yeah.
Uh, but then I think the converse to this is, it's very easy to point a finger without looking at
Yes.
how you yourself are using AI.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to be like, well, I don't use generative AI. I'm like, you probably don't. Like, the vast majority of people probably aren't in there using generative AI. However, every time you ask, and I'm not even going to say any of the names because all our devices will light up if I do, but anytime you ask one of your devices for information,
Mm-hmm.
hey, look this up for me, it's using AI.
Yeah.
Anytime, I know I was planning a trip recently and a friend suggested, oh, you should just have ChatGPT do that for you. It does a great job. I'm like, for the love, I'm not having ChatGPT. I'm not using that resource to
Yeah.
generate a list of stuff that I could
Mhm.
literally just take an extra 10 minutes to do myself. So if you're asking ChatGPT all the time to do things
Mhm.
for you or ask information or whatever, you're using generative AI. Like you're
Yeah.
using the resource. It's not
Mhm.
just about images and it's not just about writing. It's about interacting with
Yeah.
these programs on a regular basis because you think it's fun or interesting or it just makes it so much easier. I'm like, duh, that's why everybody does it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we're committing to doing is
Yeah.
making things harder for ourselves to
Mhm.
avoid using the resource, to avoid
Yeah.
giving money to and like because your eyeballs and your time are money.
Yes. Yeah. No, for sure. And so I think, yeah, I think we've hit a point where we really do have to figure out like what we're okay with and what we're not. And I think we also have to be okay with the fact that that could change, right? As we learn more and
Mhm.
things evolve. But I also think readers need to also examine what are they okay with and what they aren't. So like, in the bookstagram space, because Instagram's my main social media, like
Yeah.
that's kind of the corner that I live in on the internet. Like some people have been very like, no, period. Like I will not platform a book that uses this. And some have even again, some of these companies that are producing not everything, but they are
Mhm.
using it in some of their covers. Some of the readers have just said nothing more from that company. And that's where I differed slightly, right? And so I've had to
Yeah.
figure out for me personally, it's like I'm never going to use it on something I control the production of. But when it comes to using my podcast, the HR
Mhm.
list, that kind of thing, what do I platform? Right?
Yeah.
What am I okay with? And that's where I've shifted slightly based on just the overall atmosphere and where we find ourselves with historical romance publishing, right? But I think, people have to figure out what am I okay with, what am I not? And also, though, I think, and I'm asking this of readers and authors too, is to just take some time and have a little grace, be aware that people may have changed their stance and may have used something previously and now are not because they've learned more, like you were just explaining to
Yeah.
us about the environmental impact and these different pieces. And also just to not accuse. And so one of the things, like we're recording this on August 4th. So I guess just a day before this is going to come out. But in the past week and a half, there's been some pretty big news stories about AI and publishing. And I shared some links with Nichole. And one, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on any of these. So please don't take anything I'm going to say about these news stories as like ultimate. But one concerns there was an article written in The Atlantic looking at the future of AI within writing. And as its example, it used a book that was an indie book that was big and then picked up by publishers called Daggermouth. And this article in The Atlantic, like the guy's basically just saying, like, this book was AI and blah, blah, blah. And there wasn't a lot to substantiate why that was being said. And it could be very damaging to this author. And, and then the other thing, this is more recent, this is in the last like 5 days or so, there was another author whose debut book got a 2-book deal, went to auction, apparently 14 houses bidding on this thing, and ended up being like, I don't know, I've seen different numbers, but over $2 million deal, which is insane. And then in the last few days, their agents, which is weird to me too. Again, I don't know how it all works, but their agent said that they were withdrawing the product because they couldn't confirm for sure whether or not AI was used. And this whole thing just feels bizarre to me. Like, I don't know the details, but if you've got this many people who've read it and think it's phenomenal, and now you're saying, well, we think it's AI because it's very generic language. And I'm like, but you just did this bidding war and did $2 million for it. So why would you do that if you think it's generic? Like the whole thing feels weird to me. But all I know is that this guy who now thought he just made his career just lost out on this deal. And again, I don't know details, so don't come at me, people. But it doesn't feel good that these two examples and a previous one that I don't remember all the details, but where there's been these AI accusations have all been Black authors. And we've seen these articles where they're interviewing, these white people proclaiming that they're using AI and doing all this stuff. And there's like no repercussion for that. But it's just the whole thing is crazy and we don't know what we're doing. And it's just, and you can easily ruin someone's career. And so
Yeah.
I just think I don't support the use of AI in writing. I don't necessarily support it in the artwork either, but I understand again why some people might. But we can't just be canceling people and we can't go on witch hunts and we can't make accusations without knowing things. And so again, I'm just asking people to like take a minute and have a little grace. And this in no way means I'm supporting AI. I am not. But I
Well,
just
it's really
anyway, I
hard.
rambled
You
again.
know what I mean? Like I think it's going right
Mhm.
back to like anything that you might be falsely accused of, you
Right.
know? It's like, how do I protect myself against that?
Yeah.
And it is very suspicious that it only seems to be, you know, Black authors that are getting singled out here. Like, especially
Yeah.
given the current climate we're
Oh
living in
yeah.
right now,
Yes.
it's like a little suspect.
A
You
little bit.
know, like, you know, can we like make that a bit more even? At the same time, looking at the other side, I'm like, as an
Mhm.
author, it's pretty easy for me to substantiate that I didn't use AI in my writing. Like, I don't feel worried about that
Oh,
at all. And so I think that as an author, it's also a cautionary tale that, like, if you
yes.
are just,
Oh
as I
yeah.
said, adamant, I do not use AI, then just say versioning. It's really easy every day. Just have it. It's very simple in the programs. We back up, we save it to a separate folder, and then it just stays there. And you have this versioning of every single day
Yeah.
of your work, which also is just smart, quite
Yeah, I know.
frankly.
I need to be better about that. I mean, I have my
I've
drafts
tried.
and I save all the
Oh
time,
my
but like
gosh,
I could
I
do it more frequently because I'm scared.
yeah, because well, even just like 4 or 5 times would be
Yeah.
sufficient.
Yeah,
Do
yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's date stamped, it's embedded into that metadata. Like it's very
Mhm.
hard to like fake that,
Yeah.
and it shows very clearly a digital trail. It's not hard. So I think that's the part, especially mm, with the guy whose agent pulled it, which the agent pulling it is weird. Like
That
that's
is
just like
just
the agent found
crazy.
out something and is like, I got to try to do something to salvage my career, so I'm
Yeah.
pulling this.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking that
Mhm.
if you know the accusation is untrue, that he
Yeah.
doesn't have any way of
Well,
substantiating that.
maybe it is true. But
I
then
don't
why
know.
wasn't that figured out like way
Right.
before in this process, right? Like
Because it's been going on for a hot minute here. Like,
yeah, like
yeah,
there
it's
was
like you
a
would have written it
bidding
with AI
war.
probably 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. And again, this is all moving so fast, right? So if
So
this
fast.
book was submitted 2 years ago, they're probably not looking for the same things, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a hot mess. And maybe that's the moral of this conversation today is
Yeah.
it's a hot mess and we
It's a
just need
hot
to
mess.
educate ourselves and kind of figure out where our hard lines are for
Well, and
ourselves.
I loved your
Yeah.
comment earlier saying like I think people do try to view this as black and white, and I'm like it. You can view it black and white, but it's like a lot of other things in this world. Like it's really
Yeah.
hard to view it black and white. A
Yeah.
lot of really contentious issues are not
Mhm.
black and white, and I think that I'm not going to bring them up because they're contentious issues, but there are a lot of contentious issues, and we realized, look, there's no clear.
Yeah.
You tried to make this a black and white issue, but it just really isn't. And I think, unfortunately, AI is in that same category.
Yeah.
There are things
I
that are clearly not right and things that are clearly okay, but there's like you said, this big gray in the middle
yeah. Yeah.
that
And
we're
it's
trying to
like
navigate.
even what do we define as like okay tool use versus what's
Yes.
generative because it does get blurred. And so,
It all gets very blurred and it's
yeah,
hard to know, especially as a creative, it's really, 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 really hard to know how to navigate it. Like
yeah.
I have felt
Well,
paralyzed,
and
unable to know what to do with it.
I feel like I've kind of put myself in this position now because I do have these platforming
Yeah.
spaces, right? So obviously the podcast here is the most upfront one. The Arclist thing is minor in comparison, but it's still
Yeah.
something I'm controlling. And I've found myself having to be in a position now where I have to evaluate things. And I don't like doing that. I don't like,
Yeah.
because again, like my whole thing is I want to help support and uplift indie authors and this genre. And these things are now coming into conflict. And I'm still very anti-AI, and I would say probably 95, if not more percent of the time, I'm going to err on not sharing something. But I think, like I said, within the larger context of what's happening, I think we have to have some grace. And I don't know. When I made my statement saying I am gonna, share stuff from these publishers, and some people were really upset, and I get it. I understand that that is your stance. I respect that. I understand you feel like I flip-flopped and that's fine. But like, I don't know. There aren't easy answers. And I don't know where I'm going with that. But
No, well, I think the gist of what you're saying,
I don't
and
want
this
to be
is
the
my,
AI police. And I feel like I have to
exactly.
be.
No, and I'm with you on that. And I think that I feel like in life, this is like just
Hmm.
general
Yeah.
life lesson, if I
Yeah.
have learned. You can choose to react to something with grace, or you can choose
Hmm.
to react to something with judgment. And
Yeah.
over the years, because I have reacted in judgment and then later come to bitterly regret reacting in judgment, I try very hard to react in grace. And I think that
Hmm.
that's what you are advocating for. And I
Yeah.
think that's beautiful to say, can we react in grace initially?
Hmm.
And can we work toward a better common ground in the future? Uh,
Yeah.
and instead of just being like, me, bad, awful, terrible, cancel. And I think that that's part of the problem of the world we live in right now is
Oh,
that
yeah. It's
it's
a bigger
much, much
problem.
easier to just be reactive. And
Hmm.
that's what the
Yeah.
algorithm wants. In fact, I
Yeah.
saw something, this is slightly tangential, but,
No.
and again, who knows? Have I researched the precedents of this? No, I have not, but it resonated. It was some dude podcaster saying,
Of course.
you know, capitalism, like the industry in general, realize that there's something that sells better than sex, and that's hate. Hate sells better than sex.
Oh,
And I was like, and you see that hate does sell
you
better than
do.
sex.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think since thinking
Hmm.
about that and seeing everything through that lens, I'm like, is this selling me hate? Because if it's selling me
Hmm.
hate, I don't want to consume it. And I think like just as in general,
Hmm.
like as you're
Yeah.
going through your Instagram feed or whatever,
Yeah.
my algorithm. And I think that that's what we're seeing here too, in a certain sense.
Yeah.
It's very easy to get outraged and to feel like,
Mhm.
well, I'm
Yeah.
absolutely in the right. We are protecting artists and this is stealing and blah, blah, blah
Mhm.
without, and it is. I'm not even arguing
Yeah.
that point, but there is gray in there. And unfortunately, a lot of us fall into that gray area. And then how do we navigate that? Like
Yeah.
it's hard. It's a really hard place to be. And let's react in grace instead
Mhm.
of judgment. Let's give
Yeah.
a space to understand instead of just immediately going to hate and
Well, and
anger.
I think my thing is like, I just want people, I think, to take the time to actually think through the issue and where they land and why.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing because, like I said, the people I knew, anytime you take a stance on something,
Oh,
you're
yes.
going to upset people.
Mhm.
Like that just is. And I
Yeah.
knew as soon as I like sent that email saying, I've made this decision and this is why, I knew I was going to lose some people. And
Yeah.
and the thing is like I honestly respect that decision because that is they're saying this is my value. You've crossed that line and now I'm done. And that's fine. I understand it because like I said, I'm still very, 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 very anti-10 AI.
Yeah.
Like I understand it. I'm not upset with those people in any way, but I think it's hard because as a person who wants to be generally seen as someone likable and
Yeah.
seen as someone, that people generally respect within the space, like I was like, oh, some people don't like me anymore and that's kind of sad. And
Yeah.
that hurts, but like you got to understand that anytime you take a stance on something that's going to happen. And like I said, I think we've hit a point where we have to. And I hope people understand that my overall feelings haven't changed at all. I'm making an accommodation when my values about supporting the genre came into conflict, right?
Yeah.
And so it's figuring that out. And this isn't me trying to defend myself. Sorry, I'm going off here.
No, no,
But it's just a
but I'm
very
with you on
tangible
that. Like
example.
it's very hard to explain it
Mhm.
without feeling like I'm being defensive or I'm just trying to
Yeah.
justify it. Or
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
that's part of the problem is that
Right.
there's no way to
Hmm.
even try to create nuance in our stance
Yeah.
without it feeling like it's justification because there's just sort of this
Hmm.
mood right now that everything needs
Hmm.
to be a hard black and white. And then unfortunately, like most things, I think that's why most things end up being a contentious issue is because they're not
Yeah.
black and white and
Yeah.
nuance is harder to accommodate.
Yeah. Well, we could talk forever, but we've already been
We could.
talking for basically an hour.
I
So
know.
we should probably wrap this up. Again, thank you so much for having this discussion
Thank
and
you.
your openness and your all of it. And I appreciate just seeing this real life example of the way that you've evolved. And because we learn more, we're human,
Yeah,
things change, and
exactly.
seeing the way that this impacts you in terms of the art piece too, in a way that that doesn't affect a lot of us as
Yeah.
writers, like is so interesting to me. And so thank you for being willing to have this conversation.
Oh, I
Anything else?
love this conversation. No,
Yeah.
I think it's been fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate you having
All
me on.
right. Well, thank you so much. All right, everyone. Please tune in next week because that's going to be my normal conversation with Nichole, where we talk about her books and why I love them so much. So please tune in for that. And thank you for tuning into this. And again, no answers here, but I hope it raised some questions that we can all think about. All right. Bye, everyone.